Okay, so now we can go ahead and figure out how we can search our full text search index to see how we can start displaying the recipes that we have posted onto our accounts page. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back to PyCharm. Okay, so we will need to create some kind of functionality inside of the GET request for the user account, okay, because again, we are here to fetch all of the recipes that the current user has posted. Okay, so first of all, we will need our user ID, okay, because we will then pass the user ID into the function that we're going to use, and the function is going to search the index, filtering by the user field that we set up inside of each document, and making sure that that user field is equal to our user ID. So let's say user ID is equal to, now again, if you remember, inside of the Yarn search request handler, we have this function called check user logged in, and this function returns a user. So all we need to do is, since we are logged in and we know that this function will return a user, we need to call this function and then simply run the key method and then the ID method onto the key to get the ID of the user, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. Let's say self.check user logged in, and then we can call the key and the ID methods onto this. So this should give out our user ID. Next thing we need to do is we need to actually implement this function that will query the index according to our user ID, or filtering by our user ID. So the place where I like to do that is inside the models. So I'm going to go to recipes and I'm going to create a new class method. Okay, so add class method, define a function, and I'm going to call it get all recipes by user. And the parameter will be user ID. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to specify which index it is. So if you remember, this is index is equal to search.index, index with the uppercase I, and we need to pass in the name, so the name was recipes, okay? Okay, good. Now we need to write the query that we're going to be passing inside of the index. So query is equal to, and if we were to search all of the fields, let's say, for example, for onions, we could simply pass in this as the query. So then we could go ahead and say results is equal to index.search query. Sorry, index.search, search is a method, and we could pass in the query inside of this method, and then we could actually go ahead and print the results. Well, since it's a function, we will be returning them, but for now, let's just print them. So this would work, and essentially, if we pass in any free text into a query, we are querying all of these fields inside of the document for this word. But since we want to query for the user ID only, we need to say that we want to query over the user ID field. So we do this by specifying user_ID, because that's the name of the field, colon, and then we open and close parentheses, and inside we're going to insert the user ID. So for now, I'm just going to leave the %s sign so we can substitute the text with our user ID. And actually, since we are only substituting one value, PyCharm is even telling us that we don't need these parentheses. Okay, good. So now what we're writing is a query of user_ID colon, open parentheses, our user ID, and then we close parentheses. So this will tell the search API that we only want to search on this field of each document, and we want to make sure that the user ID is equal to the user ID that we're passing in. And just for, more information for you guys, if you wanted to match this user ID with various options, not only one, you could actually concatenate ors and more values. So in this case, we would be matching either one user ID or another user ID or another user ID to the user ID field. So here we could potentially substitute maybe 3 user IDs, and we would get all of the documents that match to any of the 3 user IDs. Okay, but we're not going to be doing this in our case. And you could also even search for other fields using a AND. So you can say, for example, the user ID is our current user, and the difficulty is, let's say, hard. Okay, so in this case, you could actually filter out, using 2 criteria instead of 1, using the AND. You could also use a OR here. This would work also. So it would get all the recipes of the current ID or of difficulty equals to hard. So again, you just need to play around with these words and figure out what your functionality is. Ours is going to be user ID and is equal to the current user. So we say user_ID : open parentheses, and we substitute the user ID inside of here. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this function inside of our request handler and see what it prints out. So I'm going to close this, and in our account.py, I'm going to say recipes.getAllRecipes by user. I'm going to pass in the user ID. Okay, so I'm going to just refresh this page. That's all it takes. And here we see we have this whole string here of our search results coming from our search index. So now it's a matter of just parsing this and extracting all the values we want to extract for our page. So let's go ahead and do that.